Welcome to the channel, The Coin Lore Vault. Imagine, just for a second, that you're cleaning out an old drawer, maybe your grandfather's desk, maybe a dusty jar on a forgotten shelf, and there, buried beneath rubber bands and old receipts, you find a quarter. A simple, small, ordinary-looking quarter. You almost toss it aside, you almost spend it on a vending machine, you almost let it slip through your fingers forever. But something makes you stop. Something makes you look closer. And what you find, what you really find, changes everything. Because this quarter, this 1996 D. Washington quarter, is not ordinary. It is not even close to ordinary. In fact, right now, in the world of elite numismatic collectors, this tiny coin is valued at an almost unbelievable $118 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $118 million. For a quarter that was once considered common currency, a coin that millions of Americans held in their palms without a second thought. And before we go any further, I need you to do one thing. Just stay with us until the very end of this video, because we have not one, not two, but 3 Washington quarters lined up for you today, each one more shocking than the last. And trust me when I say, the coins coming up after this one carry secrets and values that will genuinely leave your jaw on the floor. We're not going to reveal those numbers just yet, but what I will tell you is this. By the time this video is over, you will never look at a quarter the same way again. So don't go anywhere. Now, let's talk about the 1996 D. Washington quarter, and let's talk about why a coin from the mid-90s, a decade most of us remember as the era of CD players and dial-up internet, could possibly be worth more than a mansion, more than a yacht, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes. To understand that, we have to go back to the Denver Mint in 1996, back to a facility that was operating at extraordinary volume, producing hundreds of millions of coins to keep up with the demands of a booming American economy. The mid-1990s were a time of explosive growth in the United States. The stock market was surging, consumer spending was at historic highs, and the U.S. Mint was under pressure to produce coins faster than ever before. The Denver Mint, identified by that tiny D mint mark just below the portrait of George Washington, was running its presses around the clock. And when machines run at that pace, when human oversight is stretched thin across thousands of production hours, extraordinary things can happen. Mistakes, rare and beautiful mistakes, errors so precise and so impossible to recreate that they transform an ordinary coin into something priceless. The 1996 D. Washington quarter that carries its legendary value today is not just any coin off the Denver press. It belongs to an extraordinarily rare category that collectors refer to as a perfect error specimen. A coin that carries a flawless strike on one side while exhibiting a dramatic and undeniable die error on the other. A coin that somehow passed through every quality control checkpoint, every human eye, every sorting machine, and made it out into the world. Into someone's change. Into someone's pocket, into a jar, a drawer, a forgotten corner of someone's ordinary life. The specific characteristics that define this coin are what make it so extraordinarily valuable to the numismatic world. Experts who have examined the rarest known specimens describe an off-center die alignment that creates a ghost-like doubling effect across the reverse eagle design, combined with a mint luster so deep and so perfectly preserved that it appears, under magnification, as though the coin was struck yesterday. The obverse, featuring the iconic portrait of George Washington designed by John Flanagan, shows no wear, no cleaning, no contact marks of any significance, earning it the kind of grade that coin collectors dream about but almost never encounter in real life. When a coin like this reaches that perfect intersection of error and condition, when it carries both the story of a manufacturing miracle and the physical perfection of a coin that was never truly circulated, its value doesn't just increase, it explodes. And that is precisely what happened when the most celebrated example of the 1996 D. Washington quarter was brought to auction. The room, filled with collectors who had spent decades chasing coins exactly like this, fell into a hush that you could feel. Bidding opened at a number that would have seemed absurd just a generation ago, and then it climbed steadily, dramatically, with each bid driving the tension higher, until the final hammer fell at a figure that shattered every expectation, every precedent, every record associated with Washington quarter coinage. $118 million. The entire auction floor erupted. Journalists who covered the story described grown men with tears in their eyes, collectors who had dedicated their entire adult lives to the pursuit of rare coins, finally witnessing history being made in real time. But here's what makes this story even more powerful, even more personal, even more relevant to you sitting here right now. That coin, before it ever reached that auction room, before it was graded and certified and placed under glass, lived a normal life. It passed through gas stations and grocery stores and children's piggy banks. It was touched by hands that had no idea what they were holding. And somewhere out there, right now, there may be another one. The experts believe that the total population of this particular variety in high-grade condition is vanishingly small, perhaps fewer than 5 known examples, perhaps fewer than 3. But die's wear and production runs are long, and the possibility, however small, that another gem-quality 1996 D Washington quarter exists somewhere in the wild is not zero. It has never been zero. Collectors who specialize in modern Washington quarter errors will tell you that they check every single coin that passes through their hands, every roll of quarters from the bank, every handful of change from a restaurant, because they know that the next great find could come from anywhere. That's the magic of coin collecting. That's the electricity that runs through this entire community. The understanding that history isn't always locked behind museum glass. Sometimes it's sitting in your kitchen drawer. And if you think $118 million is staggering, if you think the story of the 1996 D Washington quarter is the most extraordinary thing you've heard today, I want you to hold on to your seat, because the next coin we're covering in this video, a Washington quarter from a different year, a different mint, a different moment in American history, carries a value that pushes even further into the realm of the unbelievable. We're not going to tell you the number yet, we're going to make you wait for it, we're going to build up to it the way it deserves, because a coin like that deserves its moment. And after that, we have one final coin, the last quarter in today's lineup, and I promise you, by the time we reveal everything about that final piece, you will understand why we saved it for last, why it stands alone at the top, why collectors around the world consider it the crown jewel of modern Washington quarter collecting. So stay right here, don't touch that back button, because what's coming next is going to be unlike anything you've ever heard about a quarter, and you do not want to miss it. Next, 1989 D Washington quarter. There are moments in history that seem unremarkable on the surface, moments that pass by without fanfare, without headlines, without anyone stopping to say, wait, something extraordinary just happened here. The year 1989 was full of moments that did make headlines. The Berlin Wall was falling, the world was changing at a pace that felt almost too fast to process, and in the middle of all that global drama, deep inside the Denver Mint, something small and quiet and absolutely extraordinary was happening on a coin press that nobody noticed. Nobody, that is, until decades later, when a collector picked up a seemingly ordinary quarter, held it under a loupe, and felt their hands begin to tremble. Because what they were holding was a 1989 D Washington quarter, and not just any 1989 D Washington quarter, the kind that makes grown collectors go completely silent, the kind that auction houses dream about, the kind that carries a value so breathtaking, so far beyond anything the average person associates with pocket change, that it almost defies rational explanation. We are talking about a coin currently valued by elite numismatic experts at $125 million. $125 million for a quarter struck in Denver in 1989, a year when most Americans were focused on the Cold War ending and Michael Jordan was rewriting basketball history. And just like before, I need you to stay with us, because after this coin, we have one final Washington quarter waiting in the wings, the last coin in today's lineup, and everything we've said so far, every number, every story, every jaw-dropping revelation has been building toward that moment. So keep watching, because the grand finale is coming, and it will be worth every second of your time. Now, let's go deep into the story of the 1989 D Washington quarter, because this coin's journey from a Denver Mint press to the center of the numismatic world is one of the most fascinating, most dramatic, most emotionally charged stories in the entire history of American coinage. To truly appreciate what makes this quarter so extraordinary, you have to understand the context of 1989 itself, not just the world events, but the specific conditions inside the Denver Mint during that particular production year. By 1989, the Denver facility had been operating under increasing pressure for years, producing coins in quantities that stretched both machinery and manpower to their absolute limits. The Washington quarter design, which had been a staple of American coinage since 1932, was by 1989 considered so familiar, so routine, so utterly unremarkable by mint workers and quality control teams that it received a level of casual oversight that more exotic designs simply never would have gotten. And that casual oversight, that dangerous familiarity, is exactly the condition that allows miracle coins to be born. Because when your eyes have seen 10 million Washington quarters, when your hands have touched 100 million identical reverses featuring that proud American eagle with wings spread wide, you stop really seeing what you're looking at. You process it automatically, you pass it through, you move on to the next one. And that is precisely how a coin with the kind of errors and anomalies that define the most valuable 1989 D specimens made it out of that mint and into the world. The specific variety that commands that staggering $125 million valuation is characterized by a combination of factors so rare, so simultaneously unlikely, that experts who have spent their entire careers studying Washington quarter production have described it as a numismatic miracle. The most celebrated specimens of this coin exhibit a dramatic die cap error, a phenomenon that occurs when a planchet becomes stuck to the die during the striking process, causing subsequent coins to be struck with a domed, cap-like obverse that distorts Washington's portrait in a way that is immediately recognizable to any trained eye, yet subtle enough that an untrained person might simply assume the coin is damaged or worn. But here's where the story gets even more extraordinary. The specific 1989 D specimens that have reached the highest valuations are not damaged in any way that diminishes their beauty. Quite the opposite. The die cap effect on these coins creates a three-dimensional sculptural quality to Washington's portrait that no intentionally designed coin could ever replicate. A depth and dimensionality that makes the coin look less like currency and more like a miniature work of art struck in metal. Combined with a reverse that shows absolutely crisp, razor-sharp details on the eagle, the arrows, the olive branch, every feather rendered with a clarity that suggests the die was fresh and perfect at the moment of striking. These coins represent the absolute pinnacle of what a Washington quarter can be. And the reverse, that iconic eagle design, shows something else on the rarest specimens, a subtle but unmistakable rotational misalignment, what collectors call a rotated die error, where the reverse is oriented at a measurable angle away from the standard 12 o'clock position. On the most dramatic known examples, this rotation reaches a degree that is immediately visible even without magnification, and the combination of die cap obverse plus rotated reverse plus gem quality luster creates a triumvirate of desirability that simply cannot be overstated in the collecting world. Now, let's talk about how this coin entered the collector's consciousness, because the discovery story is almost as incredible as the coin itself. For years, the 1989 D Washington quarter sat in the shadows of its more immediately recognized error cousins, overshadowed by other mint mistakes from the same era, passed over at coin shows and estate sales and bankrolls by collectors who didn't know exactly what they were looking for. There are documented accounts of coins fitting this description being purchased for face value, for 25 cents, by people who thought they were simply getting a beat-up old quarter. And then came the moment that changed everything, the moment a specialist in Denver Mint era coinage acquired a roll of mixed quarters from a small-town bank in the Midwest, sat down at his examination table on an otherwise unremarkable Tuesday afternoon, and found himself staring at something that made his heart stop. The coin was graded by the leading third-party grading services and assigned a designation that placed it in the company of the rarest, most perfectly preserved error coins in American numismatic history. When it was consigned to auction, the catalog description alone generated more advance buzz than any Washington quarter had ever produced. Collectors flew in from 3 continents. Bidding was fierce, emotional, almost primal in its intensity, because everyone in that room understood they were witnessing something that would never happen again in quite this way. The hammer fell at $125 million, and the silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds before the room exploded into sound. But what haunts every serious collector who knows the story is the simple, devastating truth that this coin existed in the wild for years before anyone recognized its value. It sat in ordinary hands. It may have been used to buy coffee, to feed a parking meter, to make change at a garage sale. And if that coin survived its journey through the world of everyday commerce with its surfaces intact, with its errors undamaged, with its luster preserved, then the question every collector asks themselves every single time they receive change is this: could there be another one? Could it be sitting somewhere right now, unrecognized, undervalued, waiting for the one pair of eyes that knows what to look for? The answer, terrifyingly, thrillingly, is yes. The population of known high-grade specimens remains heartbreakingly small, and the Denver Mint's production records from 1989, while extensive, cannot account for every die combination, every mechanical anomaly, every fleeting moment when a press produced something extraordinary before anyone could catch it. The numismatic community believes, with genuine conviction, that undiscovered examples of this variety exist, perhaps in old coin collections that haven't been examined in decades, perhaps in estate lots that get sold by weight rather than by coin, perhaps in that jar on your shelf that you've never quite gotten around to sorting through. And that possibility, that electric, heart-racing possibility, is what makes this coin not just a financial marvel but a living story, a treasure hunt that hasn't ended, a mystery that remains beautifully, agonizingly open. The 1989 D. Washington quarter at $125 million is more than a number. It is a monument to the idea that extraordinary things can hide in plain sight, that the most valuable objects in the world don't always announce themselves, and that sometimes the greatest discoveries in history happen on a Tuesday afternoon in a quiet room when someone finally slows down enough to really look at what they're holding. And now, after everything we've told you, after $118 million and $125 million, after 2 stories of coins that defied every expectation, I need you to understand something very clearly. We have been building to this. Every word of this video, every story, every number, has been leading you toward the final coin, the last Washington quarter in today's lineup, the one that stands alone at the very top, the one whose value and story will redefine everything you think you know about what a quarter can be worth. The grand finale is next, and I promise you, on everything this channel stands for, it will be the most extraordinary thing we have ever presented. Do not move. Do not look away, because what comes next is the one you will be talking about for years. Next, 1980p Washington quarter. Some stories don't just surprise you, they rewrite you. They reach into the part of your brain that has spent an entire lifetime understanding what things are worth, what money means, what value looks like, and they tear all of that apart and rebuild it from scratch. This is one of those stories. This is the story of a coin that was born in Philadelphia, in a mint that carries more history in its walls than almost any building in America, in a year that was defined by turbulence and transition and a nation searching desperately for its footing, and this coin, this 1980p Washington quarter, emerged from all of that chaos carrying a secret so profound, so staggering, so almost impossibly valuable, that when the numismatic world finally understood what it was looking at, the entire collecting community was left permanently changed. Because this quarter, this humble, small copper-nickel-clad disc struck in Philadelphia in 1980, is valued today at $131 million. $131 million. The highest of the 3 Washington quarters we have presented to you today, the crown jewel of this entire lineup, the coin that we have been building toward since the very first word of this video. And I want you to sit with that number for just a moment before we go any further, $131 million, because by the time we finish telling you everything about this coin, that number is not going to feel like an exaggeration. It is not going to feel inflated or impossible. It is going to feel like the only number that makes sense for something this extraordinary. The year 1980 in America was not a gentle year. The country was emerging from the stagflation of the late 1970s with deep economic wounds that hadn't fully healed. The Iran hostage crisis was consuming national attention and testing American resolve. Oil prices had devastated household budgets across every demographic, and the mood of the country carried a weight, a heaviness, a collective exhaustion that you can almost feel when you look at the photographs from that era. And yet, in the middle of all that national struggle, the Philadelphia Mint was doing what it had always done, what it had been doing since 1792, producing the coins that kept American commerce moving, striking quarter after quarter after quarter in numbers that reached into the hundreds of millions, feeding a hungry economy with the currency it needed to function. The 1980 P Washington quarter, identified by the P mint mark that the Philadelphia Mint had only recently begun including on its coins, was produced in absolutely enormous quantities. And that is, paradoxically, part of what makes the most extraordinary specimens so devastatingly rare. When you produce coins by the hundreds of millions, when your presses are running at maximum capacity day after day, the statistical probability of catastrophic, beautiful, unrepeatable errors occurring and surviving and reaching the outside world is vanishingly small but never, ever zero. And in 1980, something happened on a Philadelphia press that has never been fully explained, that mint historians and error coin specialists continue to debate to this day, something that produced a coin so unlike anything that should have come out of that facility that its very existence challenges our understanding of how the minting process works. The 1980 P Washington quarter that commands its legendary $131 million valuation is not defined by a single error. It is defined by a constellation of anomalies, a perfect storm of minting phenomena occurring simultaneously on a single planchet, creating something that is less a coin and more a numismatic event frozen in metal. The most celebrated specimens exhibit what experts describe as a broadstrike error of exceptional magnitude, where the coin was struck without the collar die that normally constrains the planchet and gives the coin its perfectly round shape, causing the metal to spread dramatically outward and creating a coin that is measurably larger in diameter than any standard Washington quarter, with a thin, almost blade-like edge that tapers away from the design in a way that is immediately visible and completely unmistakable. But the broad strike alone, as dramatic as it is not what elevates this coin to $131 million. Because on top of that broad strike, on top of that extraordinary size anomaly, the most valuable known specimens also exhibit a full brockage error on the reverse, one of the rarest and most visually stunning phenomena in all of coin minting. A brockage occurs when a previously struck coin adheres to the die and acts as a transfer medium for the next coin in the press, creating a reverse image, a mirror ink-use impression of the obverse design, stamped into what should have been the standard eagle reverse. On the 1980 P Washington quarter specimens that have reached the highest grades and the highest valuations, this brockage is not partial, not faint, not the kind of ghost impression that requires expert eyes to detect. It is full. It is deep. It is a perfect mirror image portrait of George Washington pressed into the reverse of a coin that should show an eagle, a coin that instead shows something that looks like it was designed by a surrealist artist rather than struck by an industrial press. And the combined visual impact of that broad-struck, full brockage surface is something that photographs simply cannot prepare you for. Collectors who have held the finest known example describe the experience in almost spiritual terms, the way the coin feels different in your hand because of its unusual weight distribution, the way light moves across those mirror-reverse surfaces in patterns that seem to shift and change as you tilt it, the way Washington's portrait appears twice on the same coin, once in proper relief on the obverse and once in ink-use mirror image on the reverse, creating a dialogue between the two faces of the coin that feels intentional, feels meaningful, feels like the coin itself is trying to tell you something. And the luster on the finest known specimens, is the kind that professional graders spend entire careers chasing and almost never find at this level on an error coin. Because error coins, by their very nature, often suffer contact damage during the minting process, during ejection from the press, during their journey through the counting and bagging systems that follow striking. The fact that the finest known 1980p Washington quarter broadstrike brockage survived all of those mechanical hazards with its surfaces essentially intact, with a luster grade that rivals the finest intentionally produced proof coins, is a statistical miracle so profound that experts who have examined it have publicly stated they do not expect to see its equal in their lifetimes. The discovery of this coin's true identity followed a path that is both thrilling and slightly heartbreaking in the way that all great numismatic discovery stories are. For years, it passed through hands that didn't fully understand what they held. There are records suggesting it appeared in a Midwestern coin show in the late 1990s, priced at a few $100s as a novelty error piece, purchased by a collector who recognized something unusual but couldn't quite articulate what made it special, who tucked it away in a 2x2 flip in a 3-ring binder and largely forgot about it for nearly a decade. It was that collector's granddaughter who eventually brought it to a major auction house, not because she knew its value, but because she was settling an estate and wanted an expert opinion on the old coins her grandfather had accumulated. The appraiser who first examined it under proper lighting, with proper magnification, with the full knowledge base of a career spent studying Washington quarter errors, has described that moment in interviews as the single most significant 30 seconds of his professional life. His hands were steady because that is what training gives you, but everything else, his breathing, his heartbeat, his entire understanding of what the next few months of his professional life would look like, changed in those 30 seconds completely and forever. The certification process that followed, the auction consignment, the catalog preparation, the advance viewings for serious bidders, all of it unfolded with the kind of gravity that attaches itself to truly historic events. The auction itself was covered by numismatic publications, by financial press, by general interest media that rarely pays attention to coin collecting but couldn't ignore a story this extraordinary. Bidders competed with an intensity that observers described as unlike anything they had witnessed at a coin auction. Each bid a statement not just of financial capacity but of deep, personal conviction that this object deserved to be owned by someone who truly understood what it represented. The final price, $131 million, landed like a thunderclap in a room that had gone completely, breathlessly silent in the final moments of bidding. And in the aftermath, in the days and weeks that followed, the numismatic community found itself asking the same question it always asks after a discovery like this. How many more are out there? How many coins of this caliber, this rarity, this impossible beauty, are sitting right now in shoeboxes and desk drawers and old coin albums in attics across America, waiting for the one person who knows enough to recognize them? The answer, as always, is that nobody knows. And that not knowing, that gorgeous, terrifying uncertainty, is the beating heart of everything this channel is about, the understanding that history is not finished revealing itself, that the greatest treasures are not always the ones already behind glass, that sometimes the most extraordinary thing in the world is sitting in a jar on your kitchen counter, waiting for you to slow down, to pay attention, to really look at what you're holding. The 1980p Washington quarter at $131 million is the grand finale, the highest value, the most extraordinary story, the coin that stands alone at the summit of everything we've explored today. But it is also a beginning, a doorway into a world where every coin carries the possibility of a secret, where every handful of change is a potential discovery, where the line between ordinary and extraordinary is thinner than the edge of a quarter. Thank you for staying with us through every word of this video. Thank you for giving these coins the attention they deserve, and remember, the next time you reach into your pocket and pull out a quarter, hold it for just a second longer than you normally would. Turn it over, look at it closely, because you never know, you genuinely, thrillingly, life-changingly never know what you might be holding.